Washington today, another clash of words turned into a clash of visions for America. It began when Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas, a Democrat known for her fiery rhetoric, claimed in an interview that supporters of President Donald Trump are sick, going so far as to describe his reelection as the product of a national mental health crisis. For nearly 80 million Americans, those words land not as casual criticism, but as a sweeping insult and accusation that their political choice is proof of mental illness. That it didn't take long for the White House to respond. From the podium in the press briefing room, Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt delivered a pointed rebuttal. "It's incredibly derogatory," she said, "to accuse nearly 80 million Americans of mental illness simply because of their political viewpoint." For Leavitt, this wasn't just a partisan fight. It was about defending the legitimacy and dignity of American citizens who form the backbone of the electorate. Her words carried an important reminder. Citizens who support Trump are not faceless caricatures. They are parents in small towns, business owners keeping local economies afloat, police officers and firefighters, farmers in the Midwest, and nurses in community hospitals. The America First movement, she emphasized, is filled with hardworking patriots, the forgotten men and women of Middle America. Her invitation to Crockett was direct. Attend a Trump rally and see for yourself who these people are. These remarks matter because they highlight two competing narratives about the same group of Americans. Crockett's words paint tens of millions of citizens as a national problem, mentally unfit, a crisis all by themselves. Leavitt's words paint them as the strength and pulse of a movement that redefined politics by refusing to be ignored. That contrast says more about where political language is today than it does about any policy debate. Increasingly, leaders aren't just contesting policies, they're redefining who the American people are. And for those listening at home, the divergence is striking. One elected official frames political disagreement as illness. Another frames it as patriotism. It's a choice not just about which leader you believe, but which version of your neighbor you recognize. Are your fellow Americans across the aisle dangerous and sick, or are they families working and contributing like your own? But this isn't the first time Representative Jasmine Crockett has drawn fire for her rhetoric. She has become known not for legislation or bipartisan achievements, but for outbursts that grab headlines and feed social media cycles. Just months earlier, she mocked Texas Governor Greg Abbott, a paraplegic who uses a wheelchair, by calling him Governor Hot Wheels. That single comment provoked outrage across the political spectrum. And yet, rather than step back or apologize, Crockett has only escalated her combative style. Calling tens of millions of Trump supporters sick is just the latest in a line of barbed remarks that prioritize shock over substance. Contrast that with Karoline Leavitt's strategy today. Instead of sinking into equally personal attacks, she repositioned the argument entirely. Her point was simple. Voters deserve respect, regardless of your opinion of their political choices. She framed Trump's base as proud, ordinary Americans, law enforcement officers, small business owners, teachers, nurses, working-class citizens. In doing so, she broadened the conversation from one particular press spat to something far more resonant: how politicians talk about the people they serve. That is a debate with stakes far greater than Crockett's outburst. Leavitt even injected humor into her pushback, quipping that she sincerely hopes Crockett remains a rising star in the Democratic Party because, from the Republican perspective, comments like hers only alienate voters further and make Leavitt's side stronger. In the theater of politics, that kind of quip matters. It reframes the attack as not just offensive, but politically unwise. It invites viewers to ask, if this is what Democrats call their rising star, what does that say about the direction of their party? And yet beneath the political jabs lies something deeper about America's civic health. Language matters. When leaders describe opponents as mentally ill or unfit for society, they chip away at the idea of coexistence in democracy. When leaders rise to defend the dignity of voters, even across partisan divides, they preserve the notion that disagreement doesn't equal dehumanization. In this clash, Crockett leaned on contempt. Leavitt leaned on defense. Which approach fosters democracy, and which approach fuels its erosion? For the millions of Trump supporters Crockett dismissed as sick, the attack was not abstract. It was personal. Nobody wants their political beliefs equated with pathology. And for every undecided voter listening, the choice of tone reveals something too. Do you trust a voice that mocks rivals as broken, or a voice that frames them as fellow Americans deserving of respect, even amid disagreement? This is where Justice Lens USA insists on clarity. Beyond the noise, beyond the clapping headlines, the story is about respect. It's about the language leaders use to describe the citizens whose taxes pay their salaries, whose votes grant them power, and whose lives are shaped by their decisions. Dismissing tens of millions as mentally sick is not bold truth-telling. It is reckless and divisive. Defending their worth, as Karoline Leavitt did today, is not just partisan pushback. It is an affirmation of democratic dignity. Tonight, look at the contrast. One politician described Americans as diseased. Another described them as patriots. And in a time when division feels sharper than ever, those words may matter as much as any policy vote. Because when the dust clears, what remains in the public memory is not every statistic or legislative clause. What remains is how leaders spoke about their fellow citizens. For Justice Lens USA, that is the real headline. One side called them sick, the other called them strong. And once again, America is left to decide which version of itself it believes.